With less than 3 months until the first Democratic presidential debate, the former commander-in-chief is cautioning Democrats to avoid a pitfall of election cycles past.
One of the things I do worry about sometimes among progressives in the United States, maybe it's true here as well, is a certain kind of rigidity where we say, I'm sorry, this is how it's going to be, and then we start sometimes creating what's called a circular firing squad, where you start shooting at your allies.
Joining me now, policy strategist Alaina Beverly, Republican strategist and MSNBC political analyst Susan Del Percio, and host and managing editor of Roland Martin Unfiltered, Roland Martin. With a welcome to all of you. Roland, you first here. Do you think the president's warning is fair, or does it undercut the whole purpose of a primary to not, as he says, shoot at your allies?
Did he somehow forget 2008 when he ran for president? I mean, this is the reality when you have a primary. There are 17 Democrats who have announced they're running for president. If Joe Biden gets in, it goes to 18. Swalwell may run, that's 19. There were 17 Republicans who ran in 2016. This is what happens when you have a primary. You fight it out on the issues. Now, if he's saying that once we get down to a nominee, and then you still have progressives who are saying, oh, I can't stand you, I'm not going to vote for you, like Hillary Clinton supporters said about him in 2008, although most came around, and like Bernie Sanders supporters said in 2016, that might be a problem. But look, you run, you have to fight it out and duke it out, and you fire at each other. It's called politics.
I'm curious, Susan, because you watched 17 Republicans, to Roland's point, tearing each other apart for their party's nomination in 2016. But look, the guy who won the GOP primary currently sits in the Oval Office. So does that at all undermine what President Obama is saying, at least by making it less relevant?
Well, in 2016, the interesting thing is you had this unknown in Donald Trump, and he started attacking everybody. So it was a different kind of situation than we're seeing right now than on the Democratic side. But Roland's right. This is a primary, and these people, these 17 who are in, are all successful in their own right and all play to win. Now, the question is, though, do they get too beaten up in the primary process, or do they go potentially too progressive or too mainstream to take on Donald Trump? Because the biggest question that Democrats, when asked, who do you want? And they want, by over 20 percentage points over their own choice, someone who can beat Donald Trump. The problem is, of course, everyone thinks their candidate can beat Donald Trump.
But what's interesting, Alaina, is President Obama being more practical here, because he knows that maybe leaning too far left won't be able to win the White House, and to maybe avoid the, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez approach.
I don't think President Obama is trying to split hairs between progressive Democrats and moderate Democrats. I think what he's actually saying here is, let's make sure that in this political duking it out, as Roland Martin calls it, that we still have some message discipline, and remember that as Democrats, the goal is to beat Donald Trump. So it's not so much that you have to be uber progressive or you have to be plainly moderate, but you do need to not have a scorched earth strategy that ends up burning the entire field and the entire house down.
Yeah.
Alex, can we do one thing? Can we do one thing in media? Can we stop saying going so far left? The reality is, if you run as a Republican, you have to appeal to the conservative base of the party, evangelicals, the business community as well, those social issues. If you look at many of the issues that Democrats are talking about, polling numbers show a significant number of Americans support that. And so I think we make a mistake by saying what's too far left. Voters decide what's too far left. I think we are making a wrong statement by saying, oh, you're going too far left. Look at the issues as opposed to that phrase.
Okay, I see your point there, but I want to go back to AOC, because speaking of her, the president made sure to mention her during the keynote speech that he delivered yesterday for the Republican Jewish Coalition. Take a listen to what he said.
More than 100 Democrats in Congress are promoting the biggest government power grab in U.S. history, the $100 trillion Green New Deal, proposed by a wonderful young bartender, 29 years old.
So look, Susan, your reaction to all this, and by the way, it's pretty pejorative for the president to refer to AOC as the 29-year-old bartender, but I can't say it's out of character, right? I mean, so is this behavior still playing well with his base? Is there going to be room for people to move on when the enthusiasm for his ill-mannered ways somewhat dries up?
Well, unfortunately, among his core base of about 32%, they eat this up and they love it, and he feeds off of it. And I can't stress enough how wrong this is for our country, that kind of talk. He's the president of the United States of America. He should behave like it. He should show the respect to the office and to everyone he represents, which is the whole country. And of course, he always, he will never do that. I've come to accept that. I've never supported him, mostly for that reason. But him going after AOC that way, it plays right into her hand, too, because that few hours later, she acknowledged it. So she's fine with it.
Roland, your thoughts?
Here's what I find to be quite interesting. You have Donald Trump, who clearly has never read a history book. Maybe we could put it on a 4x6 card, he would understand. There was a thing called the Homestead Act, where nearly 200 million acres of land was given away to white folks, not black people, given away to Americans. When you look at the GI Bill, when you look at the New Deal, when you look at the Marshall Plan, the United States has a long history, not only in this country, but in other countries, in terms of how do we utilize our resources. Americans can choose to use our resources any way we want to. The average person probably has no clue even what's in the Green Deal, how it goes beyond even when it comes to our environment. And so we've seen this. But Donald Trump had no problem finding $12 billion for farmers who got screwed because of his tariffs. Americans have a way of finding resources, and what the Green New Deal is saying, let's look at ourselves to make our country better. But I'm sure he hasn't even read it because, again, it's too thick for him.
Look, guys, one of the elements of the early Democratic primary has been this renewed discussion around reparations. And here's where some in the Democratic field are standing on this issue. Take a listen to that.
If that passes and you are president of the United States, would you sign that bill?
Yes.
Of course. I support Congresswoman Jackson Lee's H.R. 40.
Yes, I would.
Yes.
When I am elected president, I will sign that bill.
Yes, I'm gonna pass it.
Of course I would sign it.
Yes, I would.
I firmly support Congresswoman Jackson Lee's bill.
Alaina, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I've said this before, Alex. I think reparations is somewhat of a red herring. I think that what communities of color, and particularly the African-American community, wants is equity and equity policies that would affect the racial wealth divide. And the fact that African-American families, that 1 in 4 African-American families has zero net worth in their household, and that there are, in addition to unemployment numbers being down, but there is less wealth in the black community and in the black household. So reparations in terms of the bill is an analysis of the ways in which slavery has impacted communities of color and the African-American community in particular, and shining a light on that is important. But we also need to hear policies from the 2020 contenders that would speak to the current economic conditions of the African-American community.
Okay. Roland, I'll give the last word to you here in the wake of your comment about the land giveaways. So what are your thoughts on reparations?
Real simple. If you don't understand Reconstruction, redemption, if you don't understand 92 years of Jim Crow, if you don't understand housing laws and how they impacted African Americans, even to this day, you don't understand American history. What H.R. 40 deals with is what is the impact. Most Americans are wholly ignorant of our racial history and how it has held African Americans back economically. Look, getting the votes and signing a bill, that's a whole different deal. H.R. 40 says study the issue. Too many Americans have no clue, and so you should look at this because it still impacts American policy and African Americans today in 2019.
All right, Roland Martin, Susan Del Percio, Alaina Beverly, you guys, thank you all so much.